Welcome in, everybody, and welcome to another week and probably a huge week of XFL Weekly. I am your one co-host, Kyle Krajewski, joined by my dear friend and other co-host, Zach Cole. Zach, what's up, dude?
I'm a little somber today as we're recording this because it's reminding me that this is the last time we're going to see some XFL action for a little bit of a hiatus here. But you know what? I'm excited to get after it one more time here and recap some games or the game from last week and just talk XFL.
I should state it's a mini hiatus just
Mm-hmm.
because we're seeing signings into the NFL as the days go on and as these NFL training camps move on. So before we get into I guess the meat of the show is going to be the championship recap. And I know you're all waiting to hear that. But before we get into that, I wanted to recap and just run through uh, these XFL players, these XFL studs are getting signed into the NFL
Mm-hmm.
on getting NFL contracts after attending rookie camps and just the training camps and just kind of getting seen by these NFL teams. And now that it's here and the NFL or the XFL, the way that the schedule was even like designed or like laid out was to coincide with the NFL offseason and training camps and to kind of be over before the summer takes place. That way these guys
Right.
can get signed.
Mm-hmm.
And the NFL actually, or before we get into these signings too, the XFL actually just announced their rookie draft is coming up. Specifically, I have the date here. uh, June 16th, the XFL is hosting the 2023 XFL Rookie Draft. And there's a few parameters there where these guys can get XFL contracts leading into basically for the offseason. But they have an NFL, what is quoted as an NFL out, where if they get a contract up until in the NFL or get signed in the NFL up until Tuesday, December 26th, then they're allowed to. Up until then it's just kind of like, all right, you're in the XFL, kid. But before then, they are still allowed to sign with the NFL. But it's primarily these undrafted NFL guys are kind of being allowed to be drafted into the XFL and just get that extra few years of experience under their belt and to show off again for the NFL.
Yeah, Kyle, you mentioned that December 26th date, which is kind of cool because if you think about that in terms of the NFL schedule, I mean, that's like up until, I don't know, that's
Week
got to be
16,
I would
conclusion
say
of
week
week
15 or
16.
16. Okay, yeah, which is incredible. I mean, it's very rare that we even see anyone getting signed in in week 17 or the weeks um, leading up to the playoffs. I mean, we saw that like one exception that I can remember recently was I think Eric Weddle got signed.
Yep.
He
Yep.
came out of retirement like right before the Super Bowl. I went and won a Super Bowl with the Rams. But yeah, no, it's I think it's a cool opportunity, and I think that it's cool that we get to see this part of the XFL because this is behind the scenes stuff that we didn't get to see the last time the XFL was around. We didn't make it this far. We didn't make it to the championship. We didn't make it to the off season. So it's kind of this is some uncharted territory as well, and it's kind of cool to think about and think about the possibilities that could arise with it.
And I think it's great timing too, in terms of like it's June when this draft is taking place. So odds are, and the parameters, it's to be eligible for the XFL draft. It's players who were eligible for the 2023 NFL draft and are not under contract by another professional football team. So these are those undrafted free agents from in the NFL that are just kind of floating, waiting for their opportunity, and this is it.
Yeah.
And sure, they can still show up for an NFL team in this time frame, but this is just like, all right, I have the guarantee. Spring comes around, I've got a job.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique opportunity, and I think it's again fantastic for XF or for NFL prospects that maybe in prior to the XFL being around, it was like I didn't get drafted, crap, But here you could potentially get put into this essentially maybe minor league system that you would then have an opportunity to prove yourself, and I think that that's going to be great for the XFL because it's going to create a continuous flow of talent coming into the league, and I think it's also going to legitimize the league a little bit that these are high-level players, high-level prospects that could potentially grow and develop in the XFL and move on to the NFL. I think it's just creating that major league, minor league connection even more.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't want to say that that's the end goal of the XFL, but it definitely it's designed to kind of be that. Maybe not specifically, maybe not like this is NFL junior, but this is at least some type of football that coincides with the NFL.
I was going to say, I feel like minor league isn't even the right term for it. I think maybe like affiliate league might be a better
I think that's a
way
great
to
way to put
explain
it.
it, because like I don't want to. It's not the same as baseball or hockey, where you're bringing in these kids that are 16, 17, 18 years old, and you're trying to develop them and grow them as minors into majors. You know, these are grown men that can play football at a high level, and are more so just looking for a place to prove it. So I feel like an affiliate league is a better way to explain that.
Yep, absolutely. And then speaking of kind of getting to that next level, getting into the NFL or even returning into the NFL, few player signings to kind of highlight here. Players who are either returning to the NFL from the XFL or making their first appearance in the NFL, getting their first contract. But since the end of the season for a lot of these teams, like after their final weeks, final playoff games, these players have been allowed to sign with NFL teams, and that has been taking place every day that it's been basically available for them. To highlight a few, Ben DiNucci signs with the Denver Broncos after apparently showing up for like balling out in camp. Running back Jox Patrick also signs with the Broncos. Cornerback Luke Barku signs with the Steelers. D lineman Antoine Jackson signs with the Panthers. My Detroit Lions signed kicker John Parker Romo, probably the best kicker in the XFL this season. Zach, this one I wanted to highlight just because it's interesting for you as a Panthers fan, but tight end Jordan Thomas signs with the Panthers as a linebacker. Apparently, he went to camp for them and played both sides in camp and apparently played a little bit better as linebacker.
Yeah, it is really interesting, and it's kind of cool to see the versatility for these guys too, and even the willingness on behalf of these players to just do whatever it takes to get
Yeah.
to make their way onto that roster. And I think for the Panthers specifically, they're a little bit log jammed at tight end with Tommy Tremble, and I believe Ian Thomas is still around. To double check that, but linebacker, they've been hurting for a little while. So ever since Luke Kuechly's left, they have Shaq Thompson there, but they've been looking to kind of patch it in a little bit. And I think that as you mentioned, I think that I lost him. Jordan Thomas could be a fantastic fill-in in that position.
Yep. And then rounding out just a few highlights, wide receiver Charleston Rambo signs with the Eagles. Wide receiver Hakeem Butler, this was a big one for me in my eyes. Wide receiver Hakeem Butler signs with the Steelers, second in the league in receiving yards, and I think he had the most receiving touchdowns. I think personally, I think he's a guy who can slot in for a pretty solid wide receiver 3 or 4 role, especially in that offense. And then Alize Mack, tight end, signs with the New Orleans Saints. So just a few highlights. There are, I think there's dozens of signings currently, and there's just one DC defender on this list. So that kind of shows there's still more to come. In my personal opinion, there's plenty more to come. And we haven't seen leading receiver Jacquard Pearson sign somewhere, and that is someone I can almost guarantee gets a contract somewhere.
Yeah, especially this week, Kyle, after we saw that video come out from 49ers camp of him just torching secondaries. So I was doing some research to see if it was actually an offer or not, but all I can find right now is it was just a tryout. So I guess we're still waiting to see where he lands. But like you mentioned, Kyle, there's still some defenders, some renegades that I expect will find homes.
Absolutely.
That haven't yet. I think it's kind of the situation where they were just playing in their championship game. They haven't really had a lot of time to go out and find opportunities. But I expect guys like Teamu, Abram Smith, maybe even a Chris Jackson. Lucky Jackson or Chris Blair. Sorry, I was mixing those two up. Or on the Renegade side, a guy like maybe even Luis Perez has played himself
Yeah.
into consideration, or if not, Sal Canella for sure. I mean, I can see him being a successful tight end piece for a bunch of teams. So there's still, I think, a lot more to come, and that's a great sign. I think that showing that there's dozens and dozens already, and there's still 2 more teams worth of guys that can sign is a very healthy sign for the XFL.
Yeah, and I mean that's just even offensively because I think the big word on the street is that there's a lot of defenders
Yeah.
still kind of out there. I think the one name that I'm seeing thrown around still available. I mean all of them, but Trent Harris from the Roughnecks still available. I think he was uh, on the top of the list in a lot of stats. Yeah, he was the leading sack leader. Still available. Still looking for a signing. And another guy that I'm faithful can find a contract somewhere. Maybe Josh Gordon as well finds a spot somewhere.
Who
Back in the
knows?
NFL.
Could he make his way back in? That would that would be pretty cool. But Kyle, another guy. I struggle looking at his name every time. Talmupano,
Oh yes, yep.
the
The
XFL
Vipers.
Defensive Player of the Year.
Yep.
To my knowledge, he hasn't signed anywhere yet. So that's another one. I know he tried out with the Browns. It looks like about 2 weeks ago. So that's another big defensive name that we could maybe see stick somewhere.
Yeah, there's a long list of guys who will get their opportunity in the NFL. Whether it's just more invites, more teams, just getting an extra look at them. This is just a week of list of several weeks to come, a whole summer, to be honest, yet to come of just injuries or just adding depth and just kind of like training camps starting in the NFL and people realizing, oh, we need depth in this position or we're kind of lacking here. So,
Well, Kyle, you not to belabor the point too much, but you mentioned another key thing there, I think, is the injuries. Like, how often do we see someone tear their ACL and go down and you're like, crap, what do I do now? And you've had this whole 10-week season of tryouts and auditions for these players, even if it's not a Chris Blair, a Lucky Jackson, a Jacor Pearson, even if you go down the list and you take a name like, I'm trying to look here, like a Marcel Aitman, or a Cedric Bird or a Jacques Patrick, never mind. But like you take one of those guys that's down the list a little bit, and they still tried out, and you have film on them. It's not these guys that are just sending you them working out in the park in wherever, who knows, in Oklahoma or whatever. It's actual film from an actual game. So I think that that's really meaningful for the NFL too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's gonna happen. It happens every year, and we'll see plenty more opportunities as the summer goes on. All right, Zach. Signings, draft, everything's out of the way. Let's talk this championship game.
Let's do it.
I can't believe this happened, and it's one of those things. As a Defenders fan, I'm hurt, I'm upset, but as an XFL fan, this was an incredible game, an incredible performance to watch, and I can't believe if anybody turned on the show or turned on the game without watching any XFL or having like any of the background information that we have and seeing. I can't imagine someone turning the game on at halftime, Renegades up 20-6, and seeing the records of the two teams on the screen, 4-6 to 9-1, and you're just like, wait a minute, this is the championship. But all right, before we do all of that, Renegades are the XFL champions of 2023. The Arlington Renegades, 4-6, just squeaked into the playoffs, squeaked out, just beating out the Brahmas. Incredible championship game performance, incredible playoff performance across both games. This is a team that truly showed up when they needed to, and all like they deserve all the excitement that they have. It was a huge game, a huge performance to beat, I think, a unanimous best team in the league by this dominant of a performance.
Hmm.
This is we talked about it last week. This is what they needed to do to win. They had like a checklist of everything that they needed to do to win, and they just crossed them all off in the first half. And we're just
Yes,
like,
it did.
cool, we got
Yep.
this. And it was a great game from both sides, but I think Arlington truly was the better team. And congratulations, Arlington Renegades.
Yeah, I mean, they played a very complete game in this championship game. And Kyle, you said the records, but if you think about it, with winning these two games, the Renegades pulled in at 500. They're 6-6 on the season. You know, they won their first round game. They won the championship. They are 6-6, and I think that's very respectable. And I think that it's a sign of a team that really turned it around in the late season and figured it out clearly. I mean, I think Luis Perez was a big catalyst in that turnaround.
Absolutely.
We saw he had some up games, some down games, but I mean, from week 10 on, he was a force to be reckoned with. He was really, really, he was a rock for this team, and they played like it. I mean, in the championship game, he himself went for 3 touchdowns, which was huge. And
huge.
I don't even really. I mean, he controlled the game well. He had a pretty decent completion percentage, above 60%. He didn't turn the ball over at all. Just really a gutty performance by him, leading this team to a victory.
Yeah, and being named XFL Championship MVP.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody could have watched that game and thought that could go to anyone else. I think he was the dominant performer in this game. Huge performance. Renegades needed it, and you provided, dude. Luis Perez, congratulations. Huge end of the season for you. Going from the Vipers to the Renegades. Huge.
Yeah. He also gave what I thought was a pretty good halftime speech. I don't know how I stumbled across it, but I did on Twitter somewhere.
Yes.
He gave it was a pretty cool halftime speech, and I thought that was indicative too of how he's moved into this leadership role with this new team so quickly, which is special. And I mean, in this game, we saw that. I mean, they gave him the ball 15 times, but Davion Smith really just wasn't what he had always been. But Letty Brown seemed to kind of be the hot hand in this game, and they interviewed the coaches, and they were like, what's going on, and why aren't you going with Davion, blah blah blah, and it was a variety, and he just kind of said, we're confident in all our guys, and I think that was really, really also. I keep using the word indicative, but that's not what I'm going for. But that was just showing that they have a lot of faith in this team, and that team turned around, and they believed in all their dudes, and they believed that going into that game that they were going to win. That's a dangerous team, one that believes that they're going to win.
Yeah, I mean, huge game to just be able to be like, all right, this guy's killing it right now. He's going to kill it for us right now. Renegades came into this game and had probably the best game of their season. If not best, second best. And that's just compared to the week prior or the game prior and the other playoff game against the Roughnecks. 2 of their best games and the 2 of the most important games. That's all that matters at the end of the day, is winning in those most important games. And that is huge. I mean, story of the game for the Renegades was Luis Perez killing it on offense, and then defense just being able to stop the defender's defense, or defender's offense. They intercepted Ta'amu 3 times. They let up 2 long touchdowns in the third quarter, and at that point, not that they didn't matter, but they weren't detrimental to the outcome to their team. They let up the 52-yard run, and 5 minutes later, Letty Brown scored. Then they gave up 72-yard touchdown to Josh Hammond, and within 9 seconds of that touchdown, scored another touchdown. It was the defenders kept, actually, I don't know if you remember this, but the defenders just kept messing up on their kickoffs. And it's kind of like that kickoff rule where it has to stay in bounds and the ball has to land in that like 30-yard window.
Yep.
And back to back messed that up. And both times that just set up touchdowns for the Renegades or scoring drives. And I think that was the huge hole that the defenders were putting themselves into. But I mean, the Renegades won based off of that, or took advantage of the hand that they were given, which was, oh, now you're just 30 yards away from a touchdown or from the end zone. And I mean, to get the ball back immediately after a touchdown and one play, 30 yards to score another, that was the game for the Renegades, is just keep up. In this game, it was get so far ahead and then just play keep up, or keep scoring after the other team scores. And we saw a very, I wouldn't say close, but we saw an attempt at the 4th and 15 touchdown, or 4th and 15 conversion instead of the onside kick by the defenders, but it was intercepted. And they had tried. It was one of those things where they were setting up for it. And I can remember being like, oh, they can still win this. They can still keep up, because they were 9 points behind. And in the XFL, that's a touchdown and a 3-point conversion. Like, that's a possible return. And just even going into that final 4th and 15, just going into that final minute and being like, oh, they could still come back. That's interesting. That is new as a football watcher. Right. So that was kind of a cool experience to kind of have in the championship.
Well, and I think one really pivotal moment in this game, I think, was in the fourth quarter, early-ish, I would say. Jordan Te'amu would drop back, and he threw a beautiful ball to Chris Blair, and Chris Blair just dropped it. And he would have scored on that play. It would have been literally a one-play score. And those are the kind of things that the defenders have hit on all season, and things have gone well when those plays happen. But for that play to not happen, and then immediately they kind of had like a little bit of hangover from it, because I believe it was just a 4 or 3 and out on that. They ended up punting it back, and then the Arlington just milked the clock for about, I would say, a good, I don't know, I'm trying to look at the timestamps here. They got the ball back at 8:10 and milked the clock all the way down to 2:02. So, I mean, it was just like they kind of smothered the defenders when they got the ball back. And, had they put those points on the board, it's a different situation. Maybe Arlington is still trying to pass. Maybe it's just a completely different scenario,
Yeah, and that's kind of what kept happening to the defenders. It was just close after close after close. Like, ball stays in bounds on a kick, or Chris Blair catches that ball. It was a bunch of like what ifs that didn't pan out, and the Renegades consistently took advantage of those missed opportunities, or handed over opportunities, and that's huge. That was the winning formula.
Yeah, and I mean, going into this game, what I think we said it at 18 points. We said was the magic number for the
it was 18 or 20.
18 and 20, and I mean, they had 20 points going into half, and
they had it.
That I was like, oh, that feels like it's going to be enough. Now, of course, some part of me was still like, I think the defenders have a comeback in them, but you mentioned a couple interceptions, a couple missed conversion attempts. It just didn't click. The defenders just weren't as sharp as we've seen them be for I'll say 9 weeks of the season, with the exception of that one loss. So, again, we keep coming back to the point. Kudos to the Renegades. Great game.
Yep, and that's kind of how I think we should leave it. Huge, great game by the Renegades. You played almost perfect football. Even just in the first half, perfect football to give you that lead to win the game, and huge game. Congratulations to the Arlington Renegades on being XFL champions. That's huge.
Absolutely. And one last point, just to kind of look forward to the future here, Kyle, is like, I feel like this leaves the XFL in a great spot. because if it
Yeah.
would have been the 9-1 dominant team that won, it would have been like kind of saw that coming all season. But
Yeah.
for a team that was 4-6 and just snuck their way into the playoffs and dominated the playoffs to win, I mean, you can think of the XFL this season, and really there were 6 teams that were extremely good and extremely competitive week in and week out. I think that still, there were those two, the Guardians and the Vipers, kind of. They tried. They got a couple wins here and there, but I mean, they just really weren't ever in the picture this season. But I think it just goes to show that this league can be won by anyone year in year out.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Where going into next year or in future years, it will always come down to the wire. It will always
Hmm.
come down to uh, the next week, the final week, and that could be any team moving forward. It's just good to have that as like the the start. Essentially, is that
Yeah,
staple of anyone can win this. It's not always going to be the best team.
yeah,
And I mean, Renegades were the best team that week. They were the best team the week before, and that's why they won it. And that's huge. And that's kind of what it all comes down to. And that's a huge precedent to put to kick this league off with year one.
absolutely. And we'll have to see, I guess, who sticks around, who's new, what faces move. Like there's so many moving pieces, and I'm
Yep,
I'm so excited because we could be looking at, I don't think it's outrageous to say that the standings next year could flip just based off of who teams get and who they add on to,
absolutely.
who leaves, all of that stuff. And again, that brings in that term affiliate league because
Yep.
faces from the NFL could come to the XFL, faces from the XFL could go to the NFL. It could do lots of moving pieces. And I think year in and year out, that's what's going to make this league so exciting is that you don't know. Like Patrick Mahomes isn't going anywhere. He's a Chief. The Chiefs are going to be good, but
Not here.
we don't know that Teamu's going to be there. He could be backing up or heck even starting for the Green Bay Packers this season. So there's so much turnover and so much volatility in the XFL that things could change at the drop of a hat, and I think that's what's going to make it exciting.
And that is for sure what's going to keep it exciting because these teams will look completely different in a month. Uh, and that is to me and to you, Zach, the beauty of it. I know some people, they want names and faces, but this just kind of goes back to uh, good old classic football where you're rooting for a team, you've got a team, and that's who you're going to root for because
Yeah.
it's like college football. It's college football all over again.
It is.
Or
It
at
is.
a different level where you're just like, this is my team. This is what it's going to look like, or it could be a different team every year. And that's the excitement where you can't go into a year saying this is going to be the dominant squad again. It's going to be like, I hope they're dominant again. And that's what I'm excited for.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head.
Beautiful. All right. Now, before we wrap up here, Zach and I have to make an announcement for the coming months up until December or probably January. We will be making XFL Weekly a monthly show. So this will now be technically XFL Monthly, just still called XFL Weekly. You can catch our episodes. I think the next episode I'm going to schedule for June 14th or have for June 14th, where we will basically uh, pre-talk the draft. I think there's going to be a few things kind of floating around, basically recap some news, some huge signings,
Yeah.
player movement. We're going to basically instead of creating weekly short episodes, we're going to have monthly bulky, packed episodes. And that's kind of what we desire for this show moving forward.
Yeah. Definitely.
So XFL Monthly moving forward until about January. Feel free, keep tuning in. We love it. And check us out in the meantime. Zach and I are huge fantasy football players. We have our own fantasy football podcast as well. Check us out, First Seed Fantasy. Google podcast, search us, YouTube search us. You'll find us. And that's where we'll be living, I guess, weekly there for the remainder of the year. but you can kind of find us here again at XFL Weekly / XFL Monthly, and in the middle of June.
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet for us, Kyle, is to say, I don't want to keyhole us into an exact date, like to say, the 14th of every month. But I think if we shoot for that third week of the second or third week of the month, I think that's a pretty safe bet. So, when you're getting sick of a month and you're starting to think, man, I can't wait for this month to be over, just remember that new XFL Monthly podcast is right around the corner.
When it gets to the point of the month where you're just like, man, I can't believe it's June. Like June's flying by.
Yeah,
that's when you'll find us at the
it's flying by.
That's when you'll find us at the top of your podcast list.
That's it. Yeah, no, and Kyle, I'm so excited to transition over to fantasy football. You mentioned we're both huge fantasy guys. We love talking fantasy. We're going to try to be week in and week out, put you in a good position to win any leagues that you're in, discuss any of the news, all that good stuff that's happening. We're going to try to keep the two separate. Between XFL and fantasy, we don't want to kind of mix our apples and our oranges here, but we would love all of you guys to hop over and give us a listen over there. It's been a blast interacting. If you're into it, if you're into it, definitely. And if you're not, who knows? Maybe this is the catalyst for you to try fantasy football or get involved in it a little bit. But we do love interacting with all of you guys, and we want to kind of try to pull some of you guys over to the dark side of fantasy football and continue growing our fan base here.
Yep. And I think big term goals, Zach and I will try to make a XFL fantasy football kind of thing work to some extent. I know that's already working somewhere or being in the work somewhere. And whether that's us helping there or creating content for XFL fantasy football, that'd be so exciting.
It would be, especially because you can have one guy that's in the league one week and gone the next week. It's like
absolutely,
it's that volatility would be incredible.
All right, so with that all being announced and said, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for a fantastic season of XFL, both in just content and listening and watching us. But I mean, even to the XFL, thank you for a huge season one of many more to come. It was a thrilling ride, and Zach and I are both insanely appreciative of the product that we witnessed on the field and off, and just being able to be along for the ride.
I going into the season, Kyle, I was thinking, I don't know. I think it's going to be good, but I don't know. We only saw it to a certain extent last year, but I mean, this season has been everything and more that I could have asked for. We got some incredible players getting their names recognized. We had some incredible games this season, a lot of action, some of the new rules we talked about. So it was special. This year was very special.
We saw some damn good football, and I'm excited for more.
And so am I. I can't wait.
All right. And with that, thank you for tuning in. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter. We'll still be active in there. XFL_weekly, YouTube and podcast XFL Weekly. Just find us, search XFL Weekly. You'll probably find us. And thank you again for tuning in. It was a lovely, lovely season. And we'll see you next month.
See you.